The only thing, and this is another thing that I wanted to ask you, the thing that kind of like drives me crazy about today's bodybuilding is, I mean, I understand it's not going anywhere and the social media aspect isn't going anywhere, but the whole idea that you're putting everything out for everybody to see. You and I are from the generation, because I'm 45 years old. I think you're a little bit older than me. Well, I'm sorry.
49.
Yeah. So we're from the, wear a sweatshirt and train in the basement and don't take your shirt off until you get on stage kind of thing. The Dorian Yates deal, and I remember I was training in Powerhouse Gym in Staten Island. There was a pro bodybuilder there. I'm not going to name names. And I was working out with my nephew, and I was good friends with the guy who was running the place. And it was a pro bodybuilder, and it was like maybe 6 weeks before the Olympia. And he's got somebody following him around with the camera, for Instagram, and he's taking off his shirt. And of course, the guy owning the gym let him do it. I mean, he was a pro bodybuilder. But I'm saying to myself, man, look how different it is. Like this guy's got to worry about his Instagram following or his YouTube following, and he's got the biggest contest in the world in 6 weeks.
Right.
And to me, I still believe in, and I know those gyms aren't around anymore, like a Diamond Gym, really. There's not too many of them left. Right. But how do you feel about that aspect?
So excuse me. I agree. I agree. Something gets lost. When you're taking your focus off of training, and knowing there's a camera there, knowing you're being watched. For me, I was the same way as you said. I want to prepare myself for the competitions. I want to go on and bust my ass competing. Then I'll stay for my photo shoots afterwards, and then
right.
Then I want to go home and I want to make improvements, and I want to do it in the privacy of my own. It's all put out there now, and it's been so watered down. Most people that view this stuff, they don't really know the difference between somebody who's a pro and somebody who just is
no, they have no idea.
Famous name, but for me, it was always a distraction. And I'm actually suffering, because of this now with the business, with my company, because a lot of these guys, they build up their social media and then they sell you whatever they're selling,
That's exactly what happens. Yeah.
I'm doing a little different. I was late in the game. Social media wasn't, I retired in 2013. So that's when social media really started taking off.
Right.
I'm kind of doing it backwards. I'm building the business first. And I'm building up my social media following, after the fact, which I don't necessarily mind, because I think I'm a more grassroots, type of guy.
Right.
More niche, I'm not a lifestyle brand, this is, if you want it done right, this is how you do it. This is the best way. This is the best way to do it. I put it all to the test as opposed to what's the flavor of the month today,
Right.
But I definitely agree that there's a lot lost when you're followed around with a camera crew and, you're being, put on video 24 hours a day. It's and I get the business side of it also. I do get it, but I think there's some things that should be left. Like you don't see these top Olympic athletes. You don't see these guys train. You don't see this. You
don't see fighters. Day in, day out.
Yeah, you don't see behind the scenes. You might see it after the fight, but now it's like they're showing you everything all the way until they walk out on stage or walk into the gym or whatever they're doing.
And I get it. I get it that there's no way around it. These guys, they have to try and make as much money as possible because, you're not really going to get compensated very well unless you were like the top 5 guys in the world. So
I do believe there's a flip side to that, though.
Go ahead.
I think there is an alternative route. Nobody wants to do it because you're the outcast. If you stay away from that and keep it private, I believe people wonder, what is this guy doing? I want to see this guy. You could see what all these 20 million other people are doing 24 hours a day. Who cares?
Right.
But when you have a guy who shows up and everything's locked down and he's dominating, that's how you build a bigger market.
That's right.
It's you're going to be outcasted if you do that now. But all it's going to take is one person to step into the shadows and demand their respective privacy, and they'll give you whatever they need to give you after the fact. There's definitely a market for that, but those are going to be your top guys that set a precedence for that.
And and it has worked in the past. Dorian Yates proved that.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what that guy did until he released Blood and Guts.
And everybody was dying to know.
Exactly. And that's and even last year when Phil did not release any social media stuff at all until he showed up for the Olympia, the same thing. It was like, what is he going to look like? So on and so forth. So yeah, I totally,
Yeah.
But so now that you're a pro bodybuilder,
yes,
what are your goals as far as bodybuilding goes?
To be honest, not to be, dramatic or anything, but I really don't know how many years I have left. I'm 40. I'll be 47 next month.
Right.
Assuming that I probably have 2 or 3 more years in me. I just want to put everything I have into it and just see how high I can get. I have this thing about being number 1 in the world. So I want to try and get there.
Yeah, I totally understand. And it's very reasonable. As you get older, I think your goals become more reasonable. And what I mean by that is when you see a young person that wins right away, they're like, well, like as much of a fan I am of Nick Walker, I think he's hilarious and he's a great bodybuilder. He just turned pro and he's starting to say that he's going to win the Olympia. And that's great that he has that, but it's difficult to achieve.
Yeah.
But it's come so easy for him because he's so gifted, right? And he's so young. But when you have somebody that kind of turns pro later on in life and takes time, they understand the difficulties. Because it's kind of like going from college football to the NFL. It's really, even though it's the same, it's really different, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure when you were backstage at the North Americans and you saw the girls you were competing against, and then you did your first pro show and you saw the girls you were competing against, I'm sure you were like, wow, this is night and day, Who ended up winning that show?
The Chicago Pro?
Yeah.
Teresa Ivanchek.
Oh, that's right. Why am I thinking of what's her name? Marvelous. What is her name? Did she win?
Oh, you're Marvelous. Yeah, she wasn't in that show, but Rashana Boswell was.
Okay.
And she got second. Yeah, Marvelous. She was in
the Olympia, right?
She was in Rising Phoenix, but I don't remember if she was in Olympia. I don't know. She might have been. It was either one of that or Rising Phoenix.
Okay.
Or maybe both.
Are there any female bodybuilders that you like look at and go, oh, that's a threat. That's dangerous.
To be honest, it's funny. I would say and I think it was Iris who had like a leanness that I have never seen in anybody in my life.
Nobody has.
And that would be, and she's someone that I definitely would look up to,
right.
And be like, oh my God, I could only hope to like be there someday.
Right.
But it's funny because I've seen a lot of women that I've been watching online or whatever, and I thought, oh my God, they're so much bigger than me or this or whatever. And when it comes down to getting on stage, things are a lot different. And a lot of these women that are really bigger, a lot bigger in training, seem to get really small when they diet down to get on stage.
Yes.
It's either that or, it could be just that's when I saw them in person too, and people just look different in person.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think that I have a little bit of a benefit with the powerlifting only because, I may have only been bodybuilding for a couple of years, but I've been lifting in a way to put muscle on for just as long, if not longer, than anybody in the sport right now.
Right.
And the type of lifting that I did put on a very thick, solid type of muscle that I don't lose when I diet down. So I think that gives me a really huge advantage.
Absolutely. That was basically Mike Metzer, Dorian Yates, and Dave Palumbo's philosophy. You got to train hard and heavy to put on that thick, dense muscle.
Yeah.
I'm not that I'm in that category, but I agree. I think it comes to a certain point where you achieve so much muscle that now it's kind of time to put the detail in.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. And I do more of that now. I do still keep in some heavy stuff just because it feels good. I like it. I always will.
Right.
But it's definitely a lot more about backing down to like the reps and little shaping things.
Oh yeah, it's just unbelievable. All right, so Matt Jensen's training you, right?
So Matt does my diet and nutrition, and John Meadows does all my training.
John Meadows is blowing up in the last like 2 years or so. He's training Samson Dauda. He trains, I think he trains Fuad. I think he trains Guy now, as far as know, in the gym. Guy Sistanino, rather. I mean, he is blowing. And Matt Jensen is another one as far as the nutrition and the chemistry is just. It seems. What's funny is it seems as though like every few years, bodybuilding has a couple of top trainers that are kind of in your face. For a little while it was Aceto and George Farah. Right. And then it was Charles Glass for a little bit, and now it seems to be Matt Jensen and who's the guy that trains Hollingshead? I forgot his name. I don't remember his name.
Peter.
Right. Yes, Patrick. Yeah, right. It seems to be those. I don't know why, but it's they seem to like come in and out. But
yeah, I've been with Matt for 5 years, and I've been with John for 6 years now. So, I just found out it works best to kind of like, I see a lot of guys coach jumping. And it's like, it's not going to happen in one show. It may not happen in one season that your body is going to get adjusted to the coach. He or she can know your body. It takes some time to learn that stuff.
Right.
So now Matt and John know my body inside out, man. They can, train me, prep me with their eyes closed at this point.
Right. Yeah. What do you attribute such great gains from? Do you attribute it to his style of training, or is it just consistency and time, or what do you attribute it to?
Yeah, for sure. It's consistency and time. But also for me personally, it's not having to think. Because when I was younger, I was always in the gym like, oh, what should I do next? Or what should I do more of this or less of that? Like it was always, I was in the gym for 3.5 hours back in the day. Now at John's program, it's literally like 4 or 5 exercises. I mean, on paper, you look at like, that's it. When you're going through it and like with the actual motion, with the drop sets or however you had you doing it, it's taxing as hell. And it works. I can imagine. And his biggest thing is recovery and like health of the joints. So he doesn't have me do anything that aggravates certain areas. Like I don't deadlift. I don't do barbell rows. We don't do anything that really taxes the elbows. He's very health conscious when it comes to the knees. So there's not really a lot of poundages when it comes to like the heavy stuff, like those things, like deadlift, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But he's learned my body, like I said, and he knows what exercises particularly work for me. And the best thing about John is everything he throws at you, he's done himself, and he knows that works. So he's not just making shit up out of the blue.
Yeah. That's well, you obviously don't need the tremendously heavy weight banging anymore. I mean, you have enough size. It goes without saying. Mm-hmm. How are you able to, because it's a lot of guys' problem, how are you able to put on that size without blowing out your stomach? Because I mean, how big is your waist? Honestly, was it 27, 28 inches?
I mean, I didn't measure it, but I would say like 28, 29, maybe, if that.
Yeah. So how did you go about, because I got to imagine you have to eat a lot of food.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
But like, it's crazy because that's one thing I manage all year round, especially during prep, is we do core work every single day after cardio. Mm-hmm. Whether that's obliques, lower abs, upper abs, middle abs. So we work on that constantly. I make sure to Matt knows what foods work for my stomach and what don't. So for example, a lot of guys like steak, like that's a bodybuilder's meal, right? Mm-hmm. For me, it doesn't work. I don't digest it properly. It just sits in my stomach and it bloats me out. Mm-hmm. So we do nothing that bloats my stomach. Everything's easily digestible.
North Americans, that's right. I'm sorry. You're one of the North Americans. Mm-hmm. So from about 2014 till I'd say about 3 years ago, it seemed like you had all the muscle in the world. You kind of, it seemed to me like you kind of had some problems coming in shape. But then like 3 years ago, it was like you found the formula. Mm-hmm. What do you attribute that to?
Just the training, I never trained like a bodybuilder before. When I turned pro, I was still training like a powerlifter. I was still squatting 100 pounds for low reps and stuff like that. I wasn't trained like a bodybuilder. So, you can't expect to look like a bodybuilder if you're not training like a bodybuilder.
Okay. How much were you squatting?
800-900 pounds for low reps.
Right.
So, doing stuff like that, it's impressive, and people gravitate towards it and everything like that. But when it bodybuilding, it really don't matter how much you squat or how much you bench press,
Yeah, well, look at Dexter Jackson, 100%.
Exactly.
100% right. Dexter Jackson, Sean Roden,
Mm-hmm.
Even Phil. They weren't crazy strong guys, but you're 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were squatting 900, what were you deadlifting?
I think the most I went up to was about 850, I think.
Wow. And what about bench pressing?
About 550. My bench press was probably my weakest.
But clearly, you're probably the strongest IFBB pro bodybuilder. It's probably between you and, I would say, James Hollingshead. You had, God rest his soul. It was usually you and
Dallas
McCall. Everybody was, and even Luke Sandow was really strong. And RIP. There's a lot of tragedy. But as of right now, I mean, I'd say, like you said, it doesn't really matter on stage, but I don't know. To dudes, it's impressive, man.
Yeah, it's definitely impressive to look at, And I see a lot of guys, they moving some serious weight right now. To me, I don't play that moving weight stuff anymore, man. Like the whole he's stronger and all this other stuff. I really don't care about that shit anymore.
Well, it's whatever you're doing is working, right?
Yeah.
So, how long have you been working How long have you been working with Oscar Arden?
Me and Oscar started back in 2000. I want to say 17 or 2018.
Okay, so for people who don't know, Oscar Arden is probably one of the best coaches in the country, certainly on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So he's trained guys like Kai Green, right?
Mm-hmm.
He won 2 Honor Classics with Kai Green. He trained Victor Martinez. Mm-hmm. He trained Evan Santopani. These are all champion bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but do you attribute anything to his training methods?
Of course. He really taught me how to train like a bodybuilder. That was one of the first person that really taught me, you're training wrong and everything like that. You're not training like a bodybuilder. So I've learned a lot from him. I've changed my training because of him, So, I attribute a lot of my success to the way he taught me how to train and everything like that,
I see. Yeah, because it's making a big difference. And you are, people talk about like scary bodybuilders, like he could be scary. That seems to be the quote. You are pretty much the definition of a scary bodybuilder. Mm-hmm. You're off everybody's radar, and then you have the more muscle than anybody on stage, and now you come in chiseled. That's the definition of scary. For everybody else, that's a definition of scary. So the rumor has it that Leon Brown discovered you. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was his wife, actually. So
really?
Yeah, it was his wife. So I got to give her that credit,
How did that story go?
One day, I was coming back from the gym and I got on the subway, being back living in Brooklyn, everything like that. I actually got on the bus, the MTA bus, and she just so happened to be sitting right behind the driver.
Okay.
When I put the Metro card in, she saw my triceps, and she couldn't believe what she saw. I didn't know anything back then and everything like that, Mm-hmm. And she gave me her business card, and she told me she still is out in Staten Island. Actually, they both live out in Staten Island. She gave me a business card, and she actually introduced me to Leon. Like maybe a couple of days later, I went out to Staten Island to see her and see Leon, and that's how we started.
And how old were you about when that happened?
I want to say like 25, 26, maybe. Okay. I started very late, man.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, Leon Brown was one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's training partners, mm-hmm. and a top professional bodybuilder in the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
And he was the one that discovered you. And from what I understand, I don't know if it's true or not, he was the one that called Dave Palumbo. Is that accurate?
No, that's not accurate, but they did speak a few times after, but that's not accurate.
Okay. So who did you have a trainer? Or you guys were just doing it on your own?
Well, when I first started, a couple of shows, Leon is like an old school bodybuilder. So he didn't really, it's not too like fast in the modern bodybuilding scene, all he knew hardcore training and stuff like that. Old
school. Yeah.
Those guys back then, they just trained so hard they could eat whatever they wanted and stuff like that,
Yeah, absolutely. He was a blessed bodybuilder.
Yes.
I used to go to the same gym as him. Mm-hmm. I used to go, it was Pump and Iron Fitness. Mm-hmm. And every time I spoke to him, I mean, he always looked great, even as he got older, Mm-hmm. Every time I spoke to him, hey, Leon, what are you training? Chest and buys. Every time. That's all he would train, is chest and buys, But he's a good dude. He's definitely
great. his wife is also a beautiful person, you know. So
really, yeah, I never had the pleasure of meeting.
a lot of success to them, and you know, they really like took me in, and you know, I'm like a son to them.
Good guys coming up that look amazing. Which leads me to my next question. There's a lot of older guys. As much as I admired the older guys, they kind of, and obviously I'm not going to name any names, but they kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of shit on the new guys. You know, say they don't work as hard, they don't come in as hard, they don't, so on and so forth. What's your take on that?
I really beg to differ on that, believe me, because we've seen these guys train. We've seen them train. Because I always say, like, look, nobody ever becomes a pro bodybuilder by mistake.
Right.
And we all train goddamn hard.
Yeah. I mean,
when you see a physique with that much muscle and that much on stage, it doesn't happen by just lifting baby weights.
Yeah.
So when people start saying, "Oh, they don't train as hard," I'm like, really?
That's bullshit.
So, okay, why don't you go have a training session with them and then find out? You know. So I was laughing when they say that. I was laughing. Go right, okay, sure.
I hear it all the time from the older bodybuilders, and the problem is the older bodybuilders. The greats are saying it. You know what I mean? Yeah. The greats, and it's like, like I come on. But same thing like we were talking about before. I think these guys. I think it's just every generation thinks the next generation sucks.
Yeah, and he is that.
I'm an electrician, right? Now I'm a sewer worker, but I was on a job site, and this is when I was an electrician's apprentice, and I was on a job site, and LeBron James just broke into the NBA.
Oh wow!
And there was a guy there. He was a steam fitter, and he was steam fitter, I think so, or a plumber. I don't remember. And he was like, "LeBron James ain't shit. Wilt is still Wilt Chamberlain was the man. Wilt is still Chamberlain." And I'm like, it's just the same crap that every generation does. Yep. That's all it is. And I think it's the same thing, man.
They will always find something to pick out in the next generation. You just take it on chin as what it is.
And the truth of the matter is, and this is, I mean, I'm 44. The truth of the matter is, my opinion is every generation of athlete gets better. They don't get what. First of all, they're not even Kevin Levrone, when he made his comeback, said these guys are not nearly as
same way as.
Well, yeah, they said these guys are much bigger.
Yeah,
and the guys when in the 90s and in the 80s, very few of them had striated glutes. Now, if you step on stage, you need
you're done. You're not even in there.
Yeah, right.
But I always laugh because people always seem to be the same thing that comes up time and time. Oh, the guys in the 90s are more shredded. They're more this, more that. I'm like, okay, cool. You have all the top guys. Okay, get them out of the way. So the Ronnie, the Shaun, get them out of the way. But then look at the rest of them and compare them to now. If you ain't coming there striated, top to toe striated now, who the hell looks at you? And then on top of that, you got to be as full as hell.
Yeah,
you got to be dry as anything, and you got to get. So you look at it going,
and you need mass. You need back then. If you were 300 pounds, that was a big deal. Now every open bodybuilder is 300.
No, every open bodybuilder is 300 pounds. Okay, cool. All right, cool.
You know, it's unbelievable. So, Akim Williams is another guy that he lives in Jersey now. It's funny. I grew up in Brooklyn. He's from Brooklyn, and we both live in New Jersey now. And he's like he goes to I think his wife manages the gym I used to go to or something like that.
Yeah.
He walks in and I would, we're like, oh shit, Akim Williams. And I would shoot the shit with him. And I think he's like 320 or something like that. And I'm like, dear God, just enormous. Just, I was like, I don't care, man. I mean, listen, those guys back then were not that big.
No, but then you know what? New generation, we always give respect and just like say nothing.
Right.
You almost like, you had your uncle that always goes back, back in my day.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And you never go back and go, oh man, shut up, and what are you talking about? Yeah. You always just kind of give respect and go, all right, okay, all right.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And that's all you can do. You just like, okay, acknowledge the respect and just say, look, yeah, that's what it is. Just and leave it at that, because anything else just becomes back and forth and it doesn't take you anywhere. So you're just kind of like, yeah, okay.
The funniest one is when they talk about the bubble guts. And I'm like, the bubble guts in the 90s. I remember admiring the guys in the 90s. I remember admiring the guys in the 90s so much that I wanted a bubble gut. I wanted that big stomach, just like everybody else. I remember I went to the Olympia in 2001, and Craig Titus, he wasn't competing, but he was signing autographs. He was sitting down, and selling his merch and signing autographs, and his stomach was on his lap, like literally on his lap, and
wow.
And I'll say it. You don't have to say it, but when Lee Priest talks about not working as hard and the bloated stomachs, if you ever saw him on his off season, my God, he looked like a butterball turkey. And I'm just saying, John from Serious Silliness, Samson Dauda had nothing to say. He gets so fat. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know.
But I mean, the thing is, like, people that seem to underestimate the amount of size that we carry now, and they underestimate the amount of food that is required to carry that size. And
that's right.
And the thing is, remember, the judges set the criteria for how they want the athletes to look. If they want more size, they pick the guys. They start picking the bigger guys. Guess what? Everybody is gonna go for size.
Right.
If you start picking more aesthetic guys, everybody will try to be more aesthetic. So that's what set the criteria where you want the sports to go. So don't shit on the guys that are trying to basically keep up by doing whatever they can, because they're only trying to follow where the trend is moving to. You know. So
it's always the top guys. I don't hear the John Meadows saying it. I don't hear the Charles Glass saying it. I don't hear any of those guys that are in the mix